Welcome to Simplify. I'm Caitlin Schiller.
I'm Benjamin Solar.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Caitlin.
Well, here we are. It's really warm. Summer has arrived.
It is a heat wave.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
And I saw that we have some responses to the listener survey that we asked people this week.
I was reading them this morning. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for responding.
So helpful. We need more. I would love to have more. We're leaving the survey up at least another 2 weeks, so I will include the link in the show notes again. And we'll put it on Instagram as well. I didn't do that last time, so it'll be easy to find. We'd just love to hear from you. Do I look at the camera or not? Don't. Anyway.
Don't.
Okay.
No, you look at me.
I look at you. So it'll be on Instagram, so it'll be easy to find also.
I saw in the survey that we asked what authors people would like to hear from, and someone said Liz Pelly, and she wrote the Spotify book.
Oh,
and I read it last year, and I would love to reach out to Liz Pelly.
Cool.
Thanks for
Let's do it.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah. And I read, what do you do differently now that you have listened, or what has Simplify made you do differently? And there was somebody who said that before they started listening, which was kind of around the time that we launched the podcast and when they were starting their first full-time job, they weren't a reader. They said, I wouldn't consider myself a reader. And now they read lots of books. They actually read physical books and they listen to audiobooks. And I just think that's so nice.
Yeah, wow.
Very cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, so thanks for responding. We love to hear these things.
Listeners are awesome.
They are awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Learning animals. All right, so today we have a diet book. But it's not a diet book like you might think when you hear that. It's actually a very cool diet book, and I think the most simplified diet book I've ever read.
Yeah.
The guest is Dr. Yoni Freedhoff. He's a Canadian physician and a prominent thinker on obesity in general. He's an associate professor at University of Ottawa, and in 2004, he founded the Bariatric Medical Institute in Ottawa. And here, I want to flag that this is a non-surgical weight management clinic, which I think is very cool. When you hear bariatric, at least I think of like major gastric surgeries, but no, this is like obesity management without that, which is interesting and makes sense considering the book that he wrote, which we'll talk about. He was board certified, and he's one of the first physicians in Canada to earn that certification. He wrote The Diet Fix, Why Diets Fail and How to Make Yours Work in 2014. And he spent years writing on his blog called Weighty Matters and contributing to Psychology Today, U.S. News, etc.
Okay. You're like reading his bio.
I'm reading his bio,
Normally I ask you, why did you want to have them on? I mean, why did we want to talk about diets or kind of anti-dieting?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I think, so first of all, it's always relevant. Right? It's an eternal struggle. If you're someone who has ever tried to manage your own weight, which I definitely am, it's always something you're thinking about. And there are always new ways and new rackets that people put out for losing weight and keeping it off. And there's a new gimmicky diet every decade, probably numbers of them. But I wanted to have Yoni on, and I think that his book is interesting because he basically said that any diet you do will work. And there's a reason it doesn't work. And there are many reasons they don't work. And here are the main reasons. Here's how to address all of those main reasons so that any diet that works for you and feels good, you can do realistically. Mm-hmm. And I found that really refreshing. And I've also found just the book in general to be very warm and encouraging. And as I said, I think it's probably the most simplified diet book you could have imagined because it really encourages you to zoom out and look at your own patterns and decide, what do I feel good about changing and feel like I can change, and what don't I want to? Yeah. And to make a concerted decision about that rather than just taking some advice crammed down your throat by some influencers you on Instagram. It's like a diet process that is not a diet, but he calls it a 10-day reset. That's sort of the spine of the book. And it's just 10 days, you do one thing to rethink how you approach dieting and weight management. And it's all like very simple and straightforward, but it gives you a framework so you feel like you don't have to fail. Yeah.
All right. Now I think we've enticed people to listen to the interview.
Yeah.
Very, very well.
Yeah, it's good. And it's just like really good common sense advice. And I'll say the thing that really resonated with me is a callback to other Simplify episodes is he says something to the effect of, diets generally don't work because they require sacrifice and like personal torment. And we spend most of our lives as humans trying to avoid those feelings. And à la Nirayal, procrastination is a tool we use to avoid discomfort. So of course diets fail because we don't want to be perpetually uncomfortable and sacrificing. So this whole book is kind of about how to rethink being on a diet or dieting or managing your weight so it doesn't feel like constant sacrifice and bullshit.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then let's play the interview.
Let's do it.
And then we'll be back in the bookend as always for books.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Here's you and Yoni Freedhoff.
Summer routines live or die by how easy they are. And honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
Dr. Yoni Freedhoff, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Excellent. So I like to ask people how, at the beginning of each interview, there are lots of ways that I can describe you, but how do you like to be introduced?
Honestly, I'm a physician. I've been practicing medicine since 1999, and since 2004, my practice has been exclusively in obesity medicine. Mm-hmm. I am an associate professor at the university here in Ottawa. I've written books. I direct a couple of companies from a medical perspective. But yeah, I don't know that there's one right way, but I think basically I'm a medical doctor who has a special interest in obesity.
Actually, I think I'm glad that you started off that way because I wondered where your special interest in obesity came from.
Yeah, it's not exciting as an origin story, for some. The long and the short of it is that when I started my career and I was in family medicine, I had many people asking me what diets they should go on for various, benefits. Mm-hmm. And we really didn't learn much about nutrition in medical school. And so I didn't have answers to give people. And I think a lot of doctors, we like to be able to answer questions. And I didn't have kids yet. And there was a conference on obesity in Las Vegas. And I thought it might be nice to go to Las Vegas. And I went to the conference and I really enjoyed it. And I sort of took it from there. I ended up becoming the third physician in Canada to be certified by the American Board of Obesity Medicine. This would have been back in 2005. Opened my practice, as I mentioned, in 2004. And so we were certainly one of the first interprofessional, ethical, egalitarian when it came to diet, I suppose, weight management programs in Canada.
What I loved about your book is that the diet fix isn't really about a diet. It's about why diets fail and how to fix the way we approach any of them. Could you just lay out the central premise? Why do diets fail most people? And why do we blame ourselves?
I think it boils down to most dieting for most people involves some form of suffering. And whether that's suffering in terms of cutting out foods that people enjoy, whether it's frank hunger, whether it's an impact on a person's ability to use food normally as do others in various social situations and going out, whether it leads people to have very onerous preparatory needs and shopping needs, maybe whether it's very expensive, but ultimately diets fail because people choose to do things that are merely tolerable and not necessarily enjoyable. The Diet Fix, the book, it's been around. I wrote that. I think it's held up pretty well. It was back in I think it published in 2012 or 2013. It was not my choice of title. My choice of title was a prescription for chocolate, the end of traumatic dieting. My publisher did not feel as strongly about that as I did. It's a shame. I think it actually, not that it did poorly, but I think it might have done better if it was positioned not as a typical diet book, because I don't think that's what it is. Certainly that's not the way that I wrote it.
No, I completely agree. And that's what I found so refreshing about it. I just wanted you to speak a little bit about how a diet that runs on making you hungry is never going to work. Can you just talk about that and maybe relate it to willpower also?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe, if my memory serves, it was the first of the deadly sins was hunger. And, hunger wins. At the end of the day, hunger is why there are literally billions and billions of people on this planet. Satisfying our hunger needs is, it's perhaps the very most important drive we have behind breathing. And when it comes to hunger, though, because we have hundreds of millions of years of evolution behind us, And because hunger was so crucial for the survival of our species, when we experience hunger, it affects our choices. If you go to the supermarket hungry, you buy differently. There's actually been studies proving that people buy differently when they go to the supermarket hungry, buying larger quantities and more calorie-dense choices than if a person were to go not hungry. And we all know that experientially too. When we're hungry, we don't crave green leafy salads. But ultimately, when it comes to dieting for, I think, a very large percentage of people, at least in the past, the idea was that you needed to learn how to either outsmart hunger or just tolerate hunger for the long term for your betterment. And I just don't think that we are built to have suffering around the denial of food, given its importance, not just evolutionarily, but in life as a whole. We really do use food for everything. It is the glue that holds society together. It is the centrality of almost all of our main events in life. And if hunger is your constant requirement, that you need to just be tolerating it, putting up with it, getting past it, I think that people can do that for a time. And many people listening may be have an experience with a highly restrictive diet where they were, in fact, quite hungry regularly, or where they satisfied their hunger with foods they did not want when they were hungry. And ultimately, those efforts tend to not last for the simple reason that hunger eventually wins.
Hunger wins, and feeling disappointed and despairing about what you are allowed to do wins, in my experience.
100%. And, if your food, if your meals, if, again, food being one of life's most important pleasures, if you can't enjoy food the same way because you feel you're not allowed to have something, and instead, when you're hungry, you need to make choices different than what your body is requesting, that's embittering. And again, we can put up with that for a while, but eventually I think most people lose that fight.
Yes. I find it so, I think I already said the word refreshing once here, but it was so refreshing to hear a physician say, no, food is for something other than simply fuel, to acknowledge that food is pleasure, food is hedonism, food is connection, food is so emotionally charged for people, which is why diets are so hard. It doesn't really get recognized that well or that efficiently, especially from a medical perspective. Did you just come to that conclusion through your practice and meeting people and hearing about their struggles?
Yeah, I mean, yes, ultimately, the book is a distillation of what I learned from my patients in the years preceding its publication. But it's also just experientially. I know how I feel around food, and I know, the importance of food in life in general. And I know that this idea that we should just eat less and move more and we'll be just fine doesn't take into account anything beyond math. Yeah. And I think that food is more than math. And I think anybody listening knows that. But I do think it's people like simple solutions to complex problems. Eat less, move more is as useful to weight loss as buy low, sell high is to becoming quite wealthy. They're both truths. But, even though they're both truths, that doesn't make them workable. And in regard to food, again, we need to be able to enjoy food. It is part of the pleasures of life. As far as we all know, we're here once. And food never lets us down. Our favorite foods always taste like our favorite foods and give us some emotional benefits. Whereas our closest loved ones at times will let us down because that's the nature of life. So food is, in a sense, more reliable for us than anything else in our lives.
That is so true. Interesting. I've never heard it framed exactly that way before. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm realistic when it comes to what I recommend. There are no recommendations I make to people that I haven't undertaken on my own. And so if I'm going to be doing this very same things that I recommend people do, they need to be realistic, at least, and enjoyable enough for me to do them, for me to be able to recommend others do them as well.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about willpower. You mentioned Baumeister and Baumeister's depletion idea. What is that, and how does it affect dieting?
So, willpower is something that people have believed over the years that we really need to cultivate in order to overcome things. Now, the experiments that you're discussing about resisting chocolate and choosing radishes, there's actually some question of how reliable those experiments were. So
yes,
it may
the
not
marshmallow
be
test.
Yeah, the reproducibility of some of those old studies turned out to be not as good as we wanted. But the bottom line for the studies was that there was a notion that we have a limited daily pool of attention and willpower, and that when that pool is depleted, we will find we are not able to expend our effort and willpower on other things. You've got a certain amount of money that you earn per day, and if you've spent it all on something else, then you don't have anything left to spend on resisting food, etc. The researchers, what they were doing was trying to see what distraction might do to a person's ability to make healthier, so to speak, choices or less hedonic choices. And it turned out that when people were more distracted, had a higher cognitive load, they were not able to resist as well the temptations out there. And these days, especially with the continued rise of social media and the use of our phones, we are all constantly tapped when it comes to our attention. We are thinking about dozens of things all the time and are reachable all the time by anybody on Earth. And I think that if their research is true, that would have an impact on our ability to make better dietary choices, even if we were trying our best to do so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You also talk about exercise, and I think that most people who have paid attention to nutrition and dieting and sort of what's up in that world or tapped into it on social media have heard that what you put on your plate matters more than how much you exercise. But I was not prepared for how little exercising actually matters. I think it was something like a year of regular exercise translated to just a few pounds of difference versus a control group. So something like 90 plus hours of exercise per pound. And most people think of exercise as the engine of weight loss. What is the honest case for what exercise is and isn't good for?
So exercise is, I believe, the single most powerful behavior a person can undertake for their health. It just won't drive much change for weight. Now, the number of hours required to exercise to see weight loss, it's likely not consequent to pure math, but the fact that many of us, when we exercise, will see that exercise impacting our choices. The problem is that we can consume in a very short amount of time the number of calories that we would burn in a much longer amount of time. So it's a very unfair equation. But going back to evolution, it makes a lot of sense. If we expended huge numbers of calories collecting our food, we would need to collect a great deal more food. And when they look at hunter-gatherers and compare their energy expenditures in a day versus sedentary people here, it actually turns out that we may well conserve the number of calories we burn unconsciously, where we would see the energy expenditures of, rural Nigerian subsistence farmers be the same as urban Chicago people. And it's not expected, it's not intuitive that would happen, but it would appear that there may be some thermostat in the body that keeps track of how much energy we are expending. And if we expend more energy on intentional exercise, our bodies may burn less energy doing other things during that daytime. And so if a person wants to improve their health and improve their ability to be functionally independent longer and reduce challenges to their activities of daily living, exercise is king. But when it comes to weight management, unfortunately, it just doesn't do what would be fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think that exercise is, and this leads me into the next topic I wanted to speak about. Exercise is a healthy habit that helps you tack other healthy habits onto it because of who you're trying to be. And I thought it was really nice to see that you talk about identity. And identity is really important because who you are before and after a change is fundamentally different. And a weight loss change, that's especially true. The way that people treat you is different. The way you see yourself is different. How does identity shape whether weight loss lasts? And how might someone prepare for that shift so it helps them rather than sabotages them?
So unfortunately, I see a lot more sabotage than I do help. And what I mean by that is that, a person's, and this is not a negative statement, but we have lifestyles that are adapted to, the various things, our workspace, our relationships with our close family. We have social networks and we do certain things with them. The problem is that for a lot of people, if they are especially undertaking traditional dieting, which involves oftentimes restriction and denial, if they try to start changing, what they do in their free time or where they go to eat or how frequently they go out to eat, etc., that can lead people to struggle because it is not something that suits the life that is surrounding them and has surrounded them up until that point in time. And so, it can become a real challenge. And I don't know, I wish I could say I have a great solution for that, but I don't, in the sense that, if your friends and you, generally speaking, socialize in restaurants and bars, and you are now trying to minimize your exposure to restaurants and bars because you're trying to change your dietary patterns, that may not be something they're willing or wanting to do. That's a real challenge. Mm-hmm. If you're making changes at home to the foods you're consuming and cooking, but your kids or your spouse is not interested in those changes, that's a real challenge. So I think it can be really difficult. And again, going back to this idea that we need to change our diets very dramatically, for me, that has always been challenging in the sense that we would not automatically prescribe a specific diet because my experience with patients trying to affect changes is that if we try to change somebody and create a whole new sort of nutritional or dietary identity around them overnight, it's not going to work. And it needs to be a slow, steady thing that hopefully is something that is acceptable by the people in that person's life. And I think some people forget that there is this need to slowly build a skill set rather than just immediately, be handed a black belt and told this is what you're expected to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of building up the habits, I think that's a great way to get into what the quote fix actually is itself. Because as I said, there's no diet in the diet fix. The spine of it is this 10-day reset. Could you walk me through how it starts, maybe just the first couple of days so people have an idea as to what you're actually suggesting?
Yeah, so I guess just overarchingly first, the idea was not, in fact, to have a diet. What I had hoped could happen in a short period of time, although the days don't need to be days. They might, for some people, be days, but for other people, each day might take weeks. But it's to reset a person's relationship with sort of food in general. And to hopefully help people come to a place where no longer are they dieting, in traditional manners. No longer do they sort of look to food the same way and diets the same way, but rather they've reset their approach to everything. And so it's pretty straightforward. I can go through the various days. The first day is just getting all the things that you need for actually doing things. Whether that's shopping for different foods, whether it's downloading an app for keeping track of things, whether it's having some sort of plan with respect to physical fitness. But, you need to gather the tools that you'll have. I do think keeping track is really important. So the second day is to start keeping track of things. Now, keeping track has gotten weird raps over the years. So, I personally do think calories are the currency of weight. I think that there's no denial of that. But there is very much truth to the notion that not all calories affect us the same way when it comes to health or fullness. But bottom line is keeping track of things is really valuable because you need a data set. Without a data set, you really can't analyze what's going on.
Yeah.
And so some people may track calories. Some people will want to track carbs. Some people may just track protein. Other people may just track food. But keeping track of something is important because if you're going to hypothesize changes to see what those changes might do to your intake, having a data set's really important. Day 3 is teaching people about how to get rid of hunger for the most part. So we talked earlier when we were in this conversation about the challenge of hunger. So my belief is that hunger tends to win. With working with patients over the years, we've found that more people find hunger controllable with more frequent meals and snacks than intermittent fasting or other approaches. We tend to start people off with more frequent meals and snacks just to see what happens with respect to their hunger. Day 7 is trying to manage indulgences. So I'd said that the title that I wanted to have for the book was a prescription for chocolate because I've written plenty of prescriptions for chocolate for patients. It really is important to have indulgence, I think, with food in our lives, and having a process, having 2 questions to ask yourself, is it worth it? And what's the smallest amount that I might need to be happily satisfied is a really important piece of using food. And then the last day is about troubleshooting, because for sure people are going to run into trouble. This is not a straightforward thing. If it were, then I wouldn't have written the book. It really is a process. And I think much of it is just letting go of a lot of the traumatic dieting that people may have picked up over the years through their experiences.
Yeah. And on that note, I'd never thought about dieting as traumatic before, and it is rather traumatic. How did you come to think about dieting as potentially being traumatic for people?
Well, I just speaking to so many dieters over the years, it was very clear that for many people, it's a bit tongue in cheek, but I called it post-traumatic dieting disorder. But that there is this sort of phenotype, this collection of commonalities that people who have gone through many over the years diets, which ultimately did not lead to long-term success, and how they feel, where the trauma is feelings of ineffectiveness and shame and hopelessness. Some people feel like they're permanently damaged. They don't have healthy body images. Some will experience social withdrawal. People's relationship with food can be very unfriendly. It in turn can affect a person's relationship with others and sometimes even change a person's personality, especially for the people who are unfortunate enough to experience emotional abuse around food or weight, which is sadly not an uncommon circumstance. And so, it really is traumatic for people to go through these experiences where the world tells them if they just want it badly enough or try hard enough, they'll get there, and then struggle. And I think for a lot of people too, it can even start in as kids. This notion of weight being something that defines an individual is something that's drilled into us from very young ages, and it's really sad to see when people clearly have been damaged by their experiences with recommendations and interventions and intentions that perhaps could be described as well-intentioned, but certainly ultimately ended up being quite harmful for people.
Yeah. I find your take on that to be so compassionate. And actually, I think that compassion really defines a lot of this book, as does your definition of a best weight. You say it's not a number, but the healthiest life a person can genuinely enjoy. And how do you arrive at understanding what your best weight could be?
Well, so the concept came to me probably about 2006. So when I first opened my practice in 2004, much as it was ahead of its time, it still was stuck in the zeitgeist of let's help people lose 5% of their weight and then go for another 5%, then go for another 5%. But having worked with people after a year or two of working with people, I realized that those number goals, although some people would hit them, I think for the most part, they weren't particularly helpful. And that ultimately there was no right amount to lose in total or per week. But really, the goal of every individual, me included, you included, is to live the healthiest life we can actually enjoy. Where the actually enjoying part is the part that can take into account the realities of real life. And so whatever weight a person reaches, living the healthiest life they can honestly and actively enjoy is their best weight. That is a concept that for I think a lot of people is quite liberating, because they've been told up until we have that discussion that they're supposed to reach a particular number on some BMI table or reach a certain number for their weight to be so-called a healthy weight, when really our job is to just do our best. And in other areas of medicine where we've got chronic conditions, let's say blood pressure, for instance, we don't moralize if we can't, with or without the help of medication, reach a so-called normal level. We appreciate that our job is to see it improve as much as it can, living our best, but that it may not get to some place on a table that would be idealized.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like the experiences with patients for sure helped me to come to the notion that the reliance on numbers, any numbers, waist to hip ratios, body mass index, pounds on a scale, kilograms, none of the numbers change management. Management is cultivating the healthiest life you can actually enjoy. And the numbers, they're markers, they're data points. They may influence what a person's willing and able to change, but certainly they do not, in fact, change management.
Yeah, I find that so wonderfully humanistic.
Yeah, and I think that, going back to treating oneself with the same love, respect, and empathy we would treat our best friend, that is the easiest exercise to go through. I'm fairly certain that the vast majority of people out there who are dissatisfied with themselves for their efforts, if they then flipped it around and considered their efforts to be their efforts of their loved ones or best friends, would suddenly become incredibly supportive and empathic and realistic. And unfortunately, we are, as a species, not great at doing that for ourselves, me included. It's just human nature. But going through the exercise of how one might counsel their disappointed loved one for the very same behaviors and outcomes that a person themselves are experiencing, I think that at times helps to reframe a success out of what had been deemed failure for being imperfect, because perfection, it really is a goal we only set for ourselves.
Very true. Very true. So I want to move this over to the future, or actually the present now. I'm saying the future because your book was written a time ago, and you said that there was no safe and effective weight management drug. It was still the holy grail yet to be found. And here in 2026, GLP-1s are becoming mainstream. How has your thinking about what you suggest in the diet fix changed because of GLP-1s, or has it?
So it has and it hasn't. So what's changed is that I think the use of GLP-1s is something that should be discussed with any person whose weight is affecting their health or quality of life, and which doesn't respond to changes that they've been able to deploy on their own. I don't think people should need to audition for the medication. So what I mean by that is I don't think people should have to fail in a lifestyle effort before they consider medications. We don't do that for other conditions. Lifestyle changes can affect our blood pressures, but most people are pretty comfortable with the idea that they could also go on blood pressure medications and simultaneously, it's not a one or the other, try to make some changes to help with their blood pressure and health as well. But back then, it was the first generation of GLP-1s. It was a daily injectable called liraglutide, and it led to okay weight loss. It was not exciting and comparable to The second generation, which is the semaglutide, that's also Ozempic and Wegovy. That's the same. Those three words are all identical. Third generation is our tirzepatide with Mounjaro and Zepbound. And what will be coming is fourth generation, which is the retatrutide. But the bottom line is they get better with each generation. What has turned out to be true is that they are far better tolerated than the media might make people think. So if I have to stop medications even 2% of the time for side effects, I'd be surprised.
Wow.
The risks are minimal to none, whereas the benefits keep growing. So these medications, we know, not only help people sustain far larger weight losses on average than lifestyle alone would do, but they also help to reduce the risk of heart disease, kidney failure, liver failure. There's strong signals that they help with different types of addictions and substance use disorders. They may help with improvement of mood. They may help prevent dementia. I mean, the list truly, it's growing longer by the month. And yet we don't have a list of very bad things that are happening with these. And the bad things that people read about tend to actually be overblown by the media, who I think, as part of society, because the media is not uniquely doing anything differently than everybody else, we're primed to distrust these things because, again, we've got so many decades of this notion that if we just want it badly enough or try hard enough, we'll get there on our own. And now here we have medications helping people dramatically, and that bursts that bubble. So what I would write differently is a longer section on myth busting around GLP-1s and the benefits that people might see, and some myth busting around the risks that have been overblown or disproven even. But ultimately, they would superimpose over the entirety of the book itself. I would not change anything. The drugs, the way I would describe what they do for people is they amplify our body's own fullness signals. And so cultivating dietary patterns that in turn help reduce hunger and cravings, they influence and emphasize and improve the effects of these medications. And there would need to be some counseling too. I'm not sure what it's like in Germany, but here in Canada, these medications, there's a mail order industry for them where there's really not a lot of counseling. And the physicians aren't necessarily trained on how to manage these medications. So having a section in the book on their management and common shortfalls and ways to make them work better, reduce side effects, etc., would be important. But the meat of the book is the same. Now we've just got something that helps turn down the current, the biological current that we're swimming against with these medications. And truly, the next generation, it's leading the average person to lose the same amount of weight that bariatric surgery does. It really, It's quite remarkable for me to say that, given that in the 2010s, the early 2010s, when I would lecture other physicians at conferences, what I would be encouraging them to do is to consider having them helping their patients to not gain weight as something that they could achieve and succeed with. And here we are now with medications that will be affording people average weight losses of 20 to 30% of their body weight. It's really quite remarkable. And I never would have imagined that we would have medications this safe and effective back when I started or even when I wrote the book.
Yeah, it really is a huge change. Is there anything else that you would update the book with if you were to re-release it, say, next year?
You know, honest to goodness, the main thing is just the medications. I really do. I've written a lot over the years. So I've written over 4,000 blog posts over the years and who knows how many articles for other outlets. But of all the things that I've written, I'm by far the proudest of that book. And I really don't think that there's much that, if anything, that I would change. I would have to update some sections where, like we were talking about at the very beginning of this call, there's some question about the validity of the research that came to pass, over the years since the book's publication. But the messages all remain the same. And I think that, again, to circle back, the main piece would be to give people permission to let go of the idea that medications are somehow wrong or a shortcut or something that should be avoided. That doesn't mean everybody should go on them. Like everything, people should use how they are perceiving the impact that their weight is having on their health or quality of life to decide if an intervention is worthwhile or not. But there's such a deeply held belief out there, or it is eroding over time for sure, that medications are somehow wrong and should not be approached. I would want to be writing something in the book in the same spirit of the rest of the book, to give people permission to consider a trial of medication, if even just to get a frame of reference to compare with. How do they feel with or without the meds? But that would be the main thing, is to give people permission to explore these medications, to take away the judgment that I think too many people have when it comes to their use.
Mm-hmm. So to close off this call, I always like to say, if there were just one thing that you would like people to take away from having read your book or having listened to this conversation, what is that thing?
I think the main thing is that if it was just a matter of desire and willpower, we wouldn't be having this call and this issue wouldn't exist in society. I said it near the beginning, there's literally never been a single study that has shown a reproducible, durable, clinically meaningful weight loss for the average participant that lasts multiple years. Never, not one. That doesn't mean people can't and shouldn't improve their diets. It doesn't mean that there aren't success stories. There are people. It's just not the average person. And so when it comes to where we are today versus where we were when we wrote the book, the average person can now, without question, with medications, have a tremendously real shot at a durable, clinically meaningful weight loss. And so the takeaway for me is just that we need to give ourselves permission to try different things. And so originally when I wrote the book, trying different things literally meant trying different things, trying different diets on for size, trying different dietary patterns on for size, and to see the impact that might have. But now it would definitely also include considering medications, because they are so safe and effective, and because they make those other changes easier to live with and to actually enjoy. If you can have decreased hunger and decreased cravings and feel full faster, you can imagine how that would impact your ability to navigate your dietary choices and portions. And that's what the medications do. So that would be a big one for sure.
Yeah. It sounds like you're just really advocating for people to be the scientists and the researchers of their own experience, rather than just adherence to some blind protocol.
100%. And the experiment only lasts about 3 months. By 3 months, you'll have a very solid idea of whether these are useful things for you or not. And if they're not, you stop them. That's the beauty of medications. You can always stop them. But if they are useful, well, now you've got a frame of reference to compare to. And that's a very powerful tool when we're talking about the challenge here, which is perpetual changes around food and fitness in a world that is very distracting, where reality has a dramatic influence on our abilities, even on a day-to-day basis. And where we've got so many people pushing a lot of nonsense at us, I think taking stock of the fact that if there were one right way, we would all be there already, is crucial.
That's all. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It was really, honestly, it was very, very healing to talk to you about this. So I appreciate that.
So my great pleasure. It's nice to know that even more than a decade later, people still find the book sometimes and get something out of it. So I'm very appreciative that you contacted me, and very happy to chat with you.
Welcome to The Bookend, where we end with books.
Indeed.
That was quite an interview.
Yeah.
You set it up and you delivered.
Boom. That's what we try to do here at Simplify Inc. Yeah, it was great. It was, as I said, really refreshing to talk to someone who has such a no-nonsense, down-to-earth, all the cliches way of speaking about this topic that can feel really difficult for a lot of people, for honestly everyone, because as he says, not dieting is really what's built into our biology. So, of course, it's uncomfortable. we are biologically not predisposed to deny ourselves, you know?
When I was preparing for this, I was thinking about willpower and habits, and that's a spoiler of what books I would recommend. But, you know, you were mentioning like we're biological. There's something else that I liked about the interview, which this idea of failing in quotes at self-control that we've set up for ourselves.
Yeah.
What is that about? Like it's because we aspire to be better, to challenge, to change ourselves. We set goals and want to hit them. We want to be better. There's a positive spin at this also, and then failing at like when you really break that down, the idea of failing at self-control, like you kind of can't.
Well, you kind of
Or you
can.
only can. Or it's the only way
If you have really stringent rules about what it means to succeed, of course you can.
Yeah.
And like that's the perfectionistic streak. I think that a thing to remember is that weight control at the root of it is or dieting is always about control. Eating disorders are always about control of some sort. So, you know, they're ways. Dieting and food restriction are often ways that we can control one visible thing that is really reduced to the smallest possible unit, which is ourselves. And if we can't even do that, of course we can't do anything right. And it sets us up for failure. It's kind of sad.
It's touching, I think. Yeah. Like, and maybe I hope that's what people take away from this episode and from Yoni's work and from like, obviously we wouldn't do a show that the takeaway is try harder. God damn it.
I think that the takeaway really is try to the absolute best of your ability. You know what that feels like, and be realistic about it.
Yeah, but don't go in like the red zone. Don't try at the highest level. Like you're not running a marathon.
But what is the highest level that you can feel good about? I think what's really important is he has this framework. There are 2 questions to keep in mind. I wrote them down. They are, can I happily eat less or can I happily exercise more? And if the answer to both of those questions is no, then you're already doing everything you can. And I think as long as we're being like honest with ourselves about the real answers to those questions, then that's as much as you can do. And maybe your weight is what he calls, I think basically he just says there is no ideal weight. There's the weight at which you can have a life that you love and enjoy. And if having a life where you are drastically skinnier means that you can't go out, you can't have a celebratory glass of champagne when your partner gets a promotion, or you can't go out to dinner, then is that a life that you can sustain and enjoy? I don't know. It's up to you to decide, but that's the whole thing. It's about your decision about what you feel is possible while you're still enjoying your life.
I like this prefix of a sentence, can I happily?
Yeah, right? It's really interesting because I think we're really trained to do everything we possibly can. And if you can, even if it induces suffering, you should. And maybe we shouldn't be inducing suffering, even if we can. Personally, I'm very good at suffering. I could suffer infinitely.
Yeah.
You can too. I know you. But can we happily do a thing? Different question.
I like that.
Yeah.
Even more banal things, can I happily eat junk food every day? Or like, can I happily sleep 6 hours a night?
Yeah.
Kind of like, no.
To both.
I mean,
right?
not for a long time.
Yeah.
For a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I can imagine.
Should we do books?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
You want to start?
Sure. I brought something that is diametrically opposite to what this book preaches because I think there's an interesting takeaway from it.
Okay.
This is a callback to an old Simplify episode. Can you guess who it is?
Yes.
Who is
it's going to be Ezra Furman.
Joel Furman.
Joel Furman.
Maybe he has a family member named Ezra. I don't know.
Isn't there a musician, Ezra?
Could be.
Anyway, of course, it's going to be Joel Furman.
It's Joel Furman. Joel Furman's Eat to Live.
Yeah.
Which is, he calls it a nutritarian diet. We did this in like the 1st or 2nd season of Simplify. I followed this diet. I did lose quite a bit of weight. My vision also got a lot better. And I felt really great, but it is extremely restrictive.
G-bombs.
G-bombs. Yes. Greens.
Berries.
Beans. Greens, beans. What is the O? I can't
Oats?
remember. Maybe?
Orangutans?
Greens, beans. Oregano. Cheap. Onions. That's what it was.
Really?
Yep. Onions, mushrooms, berries, and The S
Seeds.
is some unknown thing. Yeah, seeds. Okay. So it's like very...
We do that again.
I think it's kind of funny to watch us struggle through it.
Okay. I want to look it up to make sure we get it right. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds.
We did great.
And the
G-bombs.
salad, G-bombs.
Yeah.
And the salad is the main meal. That
That's
was
it.
his.
Yep.
That was. I remember the takeaway from
Yes, and like that is my personal takeaway from the extremely restrictive way of eating. The thing that changed like my foodscape, as Yoni calls it, is that I started to think about the salad as the main meal. No matter what I do, also to this day, one of my 2 bigger meals, lunch or dinner, it's a salad with something on it. And as long as I do that, I feel like kind of fine, and I'm getting a lot of greens. And I kind of look at diet books the way that I look at horoscopes or like tarot cards. Like you read it and you take as much as you need from it and you leave the rest.
But Caitlin, I follow you on Instagram. You're also a cheater because you call stuff salad that isn't a salad.
What do you mean?
You'll be like, oh, all this potato, it's a salad.
Well, what is a salad?
Exactly. Who cares? But I'll tell you what's not a salad: a ramen packet ramen.
No,
only.
definitely not a salad.
But if you put some lettuce on it, bam, salad.
I think a salad is anything that is composed mainly of vegetables and like a dressing and is like tossed around.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You'll bake a bunch of sweet potatoes and be like salad.
A sweet potato salad.
Exactly. It's not a salad.
But
it can be a salad. Sure,
it can
I don't
be a
care,
salad.
but it's obviously not a salad.
Stop being a purist. I hate it.
I'm not a purist.
Okay.
And in fact, I wrote an article for The Guardian about not being a salad purist.
Oh my God,
Do you
that's
remember
true.
that?
We should link that in the show notes.
Yeah. I convinced them that I was head of salad.
Yes.
That was my position
Head
at
of
work.
salad at Blinkist.
And they called me, The Guardian called me and said, can you confirm that that's your actual position? I was like, yeah.
Oh my God, I love that they got the fact checker on you because they were like, this cannot be.
Yeah. Because remember, I used to make salad at work. And
Salad club.
I was like, no, that's my position.
Yep. You are head of salad.
Anyway, who cares? That was all long ago. But G-bombs. So I brought, can I do my books or do you have more you want to talk about Joel Furman? I brought like 4 books.
What?
Yeah, well, I'm going to do them quickly because I think Yoni's work, there's like, willpower and habits.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's just quickly name 4 books that are habit and willpower books, right?
Okay.
So The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal, Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg, and Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah. So like, we have the kind of willpower. I think we should revisit, and I'm not sure if there's new research.
Yeah.
But here's my understanding of that kind of era where everyone was talking about habits and willpower.
Tell me.
So the marshmallow test is BS.
Yes.
Right? So it's not just about being able to hold to, if you don't, like, can you explain the marshmallow test so that I'm not talking the whole time?
Sure. The marshmallow. Yeah, the marshmallow test is this like famous behavioral science test that's since been debunked, but it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what it was researchers gave children the option to have, I think it was a marshmallow now, or have a marshmallow, or have 2 marshmallows in like 15 minutes after doing a task or something.
It's like they would like leave the room.
They would leave the room,
and it
right?
was like, if you can avoid eating the marshmallow now, then you would get 2 cookies. 2 marshmallows.
You get more later.
After. Yeah. And then what they did is they followed these kids and then checked in with them 20 years later, and they were like, the ones that did not eat the marshmallow,
delayed satisfaction.
In other words, the ones that could delay their satisfaction and have more willpower were more successful. So a bunch of books came out about that like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and they were all bullshit. Or that it turns out that study wasn't really watertight.
Yeah.
There's something very appealing about that, though, to all of us, right? There's something like, yes, if only I could just, It also feels very moralistic in the way that dieting does. There's like something very Christian about dieting and about the marshmallow test. But like
anyway,
you said at the top, like torture, suffering. Anyway, Anyway, the point is, from the habit books, and like James Clear, for example, has talked about this a lot, motivation is not reliable.
Yeah.
Motivation should not be the start. You should not be like, I'm going to do this when I'm motivated.
Yeah.
I'm going to diet when I'm motivated or I'm going to run a marathon when I'm motivated, because motivation actually comes after you do the thing. It doesn't provide the thing. So like James Clear always has this example. You put your gym clothes by the door, or you put your running shoes on, right? Yeah. You don't say, when I'm motivated, I'll go running.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of setting habits, is not relying on motivation.
That's actually very explicitly in Dr. Freedhoff's book as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like every part of the 10-day reset, it's like, don't wait to feel like you want to do it because that's not going to happen.
And I think that's an important thing to revisit. And then the second thing is willpower we're biological.
Mm-hmm.
So willpower isn't just like who's tougher,
Yeah.
like who's sicker at being able to withstand pain, who's manlier, who's more resilient. Like it's affected by things like sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's affected by things like your environment. It's affected by things like stress. Like we are humans. We are biological, animals.
We are products of our environments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so to be like, I must train my willpower. You can increase it, you can improve it, but you have to look at your whole picture. You have to look at your whole life.
Exactly.
And it shouldn't be something like I'm weak because of willpower or whatever.
Like what can I explore to set myself up for success?
Exactly.
It's more like it.
And so it is good to be aware of like cue, response, reward, right? Like that's a good thing to be aware of. What's the Charles Duhigg example? Like every day at 3:00, I would take the elevator upstairs and buy a cookie from the vending machine or whatever. Yeah. Like how can we, there's always this kind of awareness step. And it sounds like the 10-day reset does that also.
Yeah. Noticing your own patterns, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I really want people to think about, like I said at the top or at some point, something like failing at self-control is a trap. That idea of being good or bad at that or winning or failing or something.
Yeah.
But rather we can break it down and think about tiny little things that we can improve.
Yeah.
Set habits in tiny microscopic micro habity ways.
Yeah. Scaffolding
And being aware of the rewards and the kind of cues and the triggers that we have set up, trying to change them.
Yeah.
And that we all have limited willpower.
We do.
But we can improve it if we also take a look at the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't really bring one book, but I wanted to talk about willpower.
You brought a concept.
That's right. Ideas based.
Cool. So
amazing.
Thanks. Good. Then, till next time. Simplify is produced by me, Caitlin Schiller, Ben Schumann Stoller, Joa Lukas, and Molly Rose Hart here in Berlin, Germany. We are in the back of the Chapters Bookshop at Colo Media Studios in Berlin, Germany. And till next time, check it out.
Check it out.